Now, if you are a regular France 24 viewer, there's one face that you have seen a lot of over the years. That's our chief foreign editor, Rob Parsons. Rob has been a key part of our newsroom almost since the beginning of France 24, 18 years ago. This week, he is moving on to a well-deserved retirement. So for today's Entre Nous, we decided to make the most of Rob's second to last day at France 24. Rob, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to be talking a lot about your career in just a few moments. But first, we just wanted to remind everyone a little bit about your experience here at France 24 over the past 18 years. Also, just to remind everyone, before France 24, you worked for many years for the BBC as a correspondent in Moscow.
That's right.
All right, we're going to talk about that in just a minute. First, take a look.
Hello and welcome to this edition of the interview on France 24. I'm Robert Parsons. My guest today, Kofi Annan.
Well, I'm joined now on the set by senior correspondent Robert Parsons.
International Affairs Editor Robert Parsons, just back.
It's a mouthful.
Just back from the Middle East. How are you?
I'm good. If Nelson Mandela's dream of a non-racial South Africa is ever to come true, then it's at colourblind schools like this one in Johannesburg that it'll have to take root. There are a few electoral posters dotted around Donetsk, but campaigning for the presidential election has been almost non-existent. It's going to take a lot of courage to open the polls on Sunday, and even more to vote. Probably it's nowhere more intense than just 30 kilometers from where I am now in Kramatorsk. More importantly, the government is trying to improve the country's air defense to deprive Russia of the ability to strike at its power grid. As ever with these sort of things in Gaza, where journalists are not able to get access, there is always a cloud of obscurity over what's going on. But what Hamas is claiming is that they captured a small Israeli patrol. I think.
All right, we'll have to leave it there for now. I want to thank you, Robert Parsons.
Thanks very much. Rob Parsons.
All right, Robert Parsons, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for coming in and talking to us about Iraq. Aw, we're both such babies, Rob. We've come a long way. You certainly have come a long way. You've traveled around the world many times for your work. I mean, I know it's hard to boil it down to one moment, but is there a particular highlight that stands out for you in your career?
Yeah, I mean, it has to be the 9 years I spent as the BBC's Moscow correspondent, 9 years in which virtually, everything happened. It was an incredible time with the collapse of the Soviet Union having only just happened. So a new state was emerging from the rubble of the Soviet Union. Not at all clear where it was going. There were all kinds of problems. There was a financial crisis whilst I was there in 1998, on top of smaller financial crises before that, in which people's savings just evaporated, almost overnight, and terrible poverty. And so there was the sort of despair and depression of watching that happen around. But on top of that, there was a criminality of a kind I'd never seen before in my life and never seen since, where the state effectively stopped functioning at many different levels, so that if you were setting up a business, you had to rely on informal means for protection, what the Russians call the root, the krysha. So you set up a business. A friend of mine did this. He set up a business as a PR operation. Within days of getting going, this man came round to see him and said, "I'm going to be looking after you from now on." There was meant to be no two ways about it, but he said, "No, I'll find my own, thanks very much." But that was the situation, and many people either had to accept that or faced dire consequences, including death. So it was a really terrible time. And then the wars as well, of which the two in Chechnya were perhaps the most terrible.
Well, was there ever a moment where you were truly terrified, perhaps scared for your own life?
Yeah, I mean, on several occasions in Chechnya, but the worst, I suppose, was one time I was in Grozny with a driver and my cameraman. We were in an armored jeep. And the city had just been taken by the Russians and was completely destroyed. It was like sort of Armageddon all around you, and just a few internally displaced people wandering around the streets. And we came across, it was getting towards evening, we came across this old lady who was quite clearly shell-shocked. She didn't know what she was doing. We stopped and asked her whether we could help her, and she said, "I want to go home." So we said, "Where's home?" And she couldn't really describe it to us. Well, we drove around with her for a while and took her somewhere, which she said, "Yeah, that's okay." But we took so long doing it that we passed the curfew time. So we found ourselves leaving the city after 6 o'clock. After 6 o'clock, there's meant to be no movement on the streets. And just as we were going outside, driving outside of Grozny to head back to where we'd come from, we came under fire from a Russian patrol up on a hillside, just a few hundred meters from where we were. So we stopped the Land Rover we were in, flashed our lights, tried everything. They kept shooting at us. We were just thinking, what on earth can we do to stop them doing this? So we tried everything, opening the door and shouting. It didn't work at all. And then, suddenly, our driver, who was a Dagestani, also from the North Caucasus, a guy called Makhach, said, I've got a flare that a Russian soldier gave me the other day. And it's, it's to use if you're a friend. So we said, well, go on, use it quickly. So we opened the door and set off this flare. It's a green flare, and the shooting stopped. Yeah. This Russian patrol came down and said, look, you don't know how lucky you are. We just brought up the cannon. Wow. And we were going to shoot you if you hadn't done that. And I had a hip flask of whiskey with me, so
ready to go.
we shared that, and on we went.
So it's interesting, Rob. You have had a lot of war stories over the years with a lot of different colleagues. For example, Georgia. During your time in Georgia, you had a good friend named David Chater. Now he sent in a little word for you. Let's take a quick listen to what he had to say.
We worked together quite closely in Tbilisi. We both helped set up a station for the president, Saakashvili, in Georgia. So we had a great time, but it's a wonderful book because there were so many bizarre things happening during setting up that TV station that most people now just wouldn't believe it. It's going to make a good series, which Rob and I can write when he's in retirement, and there are no more deadlines haunting us. So good luck, Rob.
David Chater, a long history you've had with the country of Georgia. I mean, you've got a PhD in Georgian. Wait, I saw it. Where is it? What's your PhD
Nationalism.
in? Yes, Georgian nationalism. You speak fluent Georgian in addition to fluent Russian. I mean, what was why Georgia?
Well, I mean, it was the interest in nationalism to begin with. And when I chose the subject, I got interested in Georgia. I'm Scottish myself, and I was interested in nationalism as a phenomenon. And I was interested in the Soviet Union, how it dealt with the issue of nationalism. And Georgia just struck me as being more interesting than any of the other republics. So I ended up getting a grant and going there. At the time, there were hardly any Westerners in Georgia, 4, I think, including myself. So it gives you an idea how much things have changed now. 4 decades later, it's completely different. Foreigners everywhere now.
Indeed. You mentioned being Scottish, and another friend of yours sent in a video about something that happened when you and he were wearing kilts. This is Alan Little, a former colleague from the BBC. Let's listen.
Hey, Rob. I've had 3.5 decades on the road, and one of the big highlights of my time has been that weird and wonderful, wild time we spent in the Moscow bureau together with the BBC. And I will never forget standing in Red Square on New Year's Eve with you, when suddenly at midnight, people started letting fireworks off from their hands and the rockets were flying along at knee height, horizontally, and you and I suddenly both realizing that it might have been a mistake for us both to be wearing our kilts. Anyway, have a happy retirement, Rob, and some well-earned idleness. Have a great night. See you.
Rob, your reaction?
Oh, I remember that so well. It was incredible. Exactly as Alan said, the rockets were flying, just a metre or so above the ground, horizontal to the ground. There's nothing you could do but just hope they didn't
for the best. Well, fortunately, you survived. Right? That's not the only little video we have for you. Obviously, you work with a group of incredible international affairs editors, as well as other colleagues here at France 24 that you see often. They also wanted to say a little goodbye. Let's watch.
Rob is the person who hired me at France 24, and he's always been someone I looked up to because he writes like a dream.
If there's one song that reminds me of Rob Parsons, it has to be Georgia on My Mind by Ray Charles. Not because of Georgia Maloney, not because of Georgia in the United States, but because of Georgia, where Rob has a house. And one of the little known things about Rob is that at that house he has a vineyard where he makes wine, and if you're very lucky, he will give you a bottle.
So Rob Parsons is a fantastic journalist, but he's also a really, really nice colleague. He's really generous, really warm, easygoing, great fun to be around. He's got a good sense of humour. We were told we should say something that other people don't know about him, which I'm not sure he'd like. So I will tell you that he has lovely handwriting, which is always a good sign.
Rob, how dare you? I'd show up in the newsroom all set with my talking points on Russia and Georgia and Syria, and then you'd go and make me think, even change my mind. You've made me a more thoughtful journalist, and my job will be a lot harder without you.
Robert, our chief global foreign editor, you've been a pinnacle of knowledge and excellence. You've been a fabulous reporter. We're going to miss you. We salute you.
That was Tom Fenton there at the end, the head of the English channel here at France 24. A job you held yourself for a while too, Rob, as well. But the thing I love in that montage, apart from the nice handwriting, is the wine, making wine in Georgia. I mean, how good is that wine?
Oh, my wine?
Yeah.
Well, my wine's pretty good. I don't make it myself. A friend of mine called Temuri makes it. He lives in the village and looks after the house that I've got there.
Mm-hmm.
And Temuri makes about 1,200 litres of wine from our grapes and his grapes a year. Most of it we drink ourselves. We sell some of it to local restaurants. Yeah, but it's pretty good. Mostly white and a bit of red as well. But local Georgian varieties, the Katsiteli and Saperavi.
So, Rob, we're almost out of time. Just a few final words before you go.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I've had my career, 40 years of journalism, bookended by the 18 years I spent at the BBC and the 18 years I spent at France 24 with 3 years at Radio Liberty, Radio Free Europe in the middle. It's been extraordinary. The first 18 years with the BBC were wonderful years. A huge organisation which pulls a lot of weight wherever you go around the world. And then coming to France 24, a startup, immensely exciting with a young group of journalists starting off in a completely new experience. With a much different atmosphere, much more of a family atmosphere, because something like as big as the BBC. And I've enjoyed those years immensely, made so many friends here, worked with so many good professionals and done so many interesting things. I'll remember it forever.
Oh, well, thank you so much for everything. It's such a pleasure to have been able to have worked with you over the years. I know we're going to stay in touch. But here's wishing you a wonderful retirement filled with whatever you want that to look like. So I hope it's wonderful for you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to you, Robert Parsons.